Queen Elizabeth II, an era finished. Elizabeth II was Queen of the United Kingdom from February 6, 1952 until her death on September 8, 2022. Her reign of 70 years and 214 days was the longest of any British monarch and the second longest recorded of any monarch of a sovereign country. Early life and education. When she was born in Mayfair in 1926, Princess Elizabeth, later the Queen, and her family did not expect that she would one day become monarch. But everything changed in December 1936 when her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated, making her father king, and her next in line to the throne. She was the first child of the Duke and Duchess of York, who later became King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. She was christened Elizabeth Alexandra Mary at Buckingham Palace on 29 May that year. At the time she stood third in the line of succession to the throne after Edward, Prince of Wales, later King Edward VIII, and her father, the Duke of York. Family life. The princess's early years were spent at 145 Piccadilly, the London house taken by her parents shortly after her birth, and at White Lodge in Richmond Park. In 1930, Princess Elizabeth's sister, Princess Margaret Rose, was born. The family of four were very close. The abdication of King Edward VIII. Princess Elizabeth's quiet family life came to an end in 1936, when her grandfather, King George V, died. His eldest son came to the throne as King Edward VIII, but, before the end of the year, King Edward VIII had decided to give up the throne in order to marry Mrs. Wallis Simpson. The war years. The King and Queen joined them at Windsor whenever possible, but continued to stay in London, touring the country in support of the war effort, including meeting communities who had suffered from bombing raids. It was a time of austerity and anxiety for the whole country, including the royal family. Education. After her father succeeded to the throne in 1936 and Princess Elizabeth became heir presumptive, first in line to the throne, she started to study constitutional history and law as preparation for her future role. She received tuition from her father, as well as sessions with Henry Marten, the vice provost of Eton. Queen's accession and coronation. Later in the year, the date was set for the coronation at Westminster Abbey and preparations began for the spectacular ceremony. The first televised coronation. The ceremony was broadcast on radio around the world and, at the Queen's request, on television for the first time. Television brought the splendor and significance of the coronation to millions of people around the world, in a way never before possible. Regalia and dress. St. Edward's crown was used to crown Her Majesty at the coronation service, and the Queen wore the imperial state crown on her departure from Westminster Abbey. The coronation dress was designed by Sir Norman Hartnell, and Her Majesty went on to wear it during receptions at Buckingham Palace and the Palace of Holyrood House and for the openings of Parliament in New Zealand, Australia and Ceylon in 1954, ensuring that it was seen across the Commonwealth. The Queen and the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is an international organization, spanning many geographical regions, religions and cultures. It exists to foster international cooperation and trade links between people all over the world. The Queen's Commonwealth visits. 1/3 of the Queen's total overseas visits were to Commonwealth countries. She attended 22 Commonwealth heads of government meetings and 7 Commonwealth Games during her reign. Queen's Jubilees and milestones. The Platinum Jubilee. In 2022 the Queen became the first British monarch to celebrate a Platinum Jubilee. The longest reigning monarch. On September 9, 2015, the Queen became Britain's longest reigning monarch, surpassing the reign of her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria. Queen's hobbies and interests. Horses. The Queen's first pony was given to her by her grandfather King George V, a Shetland called Peggy, marking the beginning of a lifelong love of horses. Dogs. For her 18th birthday, the Queen was given a corgi named Susan from whom numerous successive dogs were bred. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh both loved Scottish country dancing. Queen and the Armed Forces. As sovereign, the Queen was head of the armed forces, as well as being the wife, mother and grandmother of individuals who served in the forces. The Queen's relationship with the armed forces began when, as Princess Elizabeth, she joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, in 1945, becoming the first female member of the royal family to join the armed services as a full-time active member. Remembrance. The Queen and the Church. The Queen's role as defender of the faith and supreme governor of the Church of England was both an important element of her role as monarch and a deeply personal part of her life. Her Majesty spoke openly on many occasions of the strength she took from her Christian faith, and often turned to the teachings of the Bible at difficult moments in her own life and the life of the nation. At her coronation in 1953, the Queen was anointed by the Archbishop of Canterbury and took an oath to maintain and preserve inviolably the settlement of the Church of England, and the doctrine, worship, discipline, and government thereof, as by law established in England. Personal beliefs. The Queen was a committed Christian and often referred to her faith in her annual Christmas broadcasts, the moment in the year when she was able to reflect on events and express more personal views. Other faiths. As head of the nation and head of the Commonwealth, Her Majesty recognized and celebrated other faiths in the UK and the Commonwealth. Following the death of Her Majesty, the Queen, floral tributes have been laid at sites across the UK. Across the UK and overseas territories, gun salutes were fired at 1300 hours. Parish churches, chapels and cathedrals across the UK tolled their bells in memory of the Queen. Statement from the King following the death of the Queen. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world.